Another day, another mainstream news outlet defending extremism. This time it's the New Yorker, hosting a climate change extremist advocating for intelligent sabotage, with a segment they called How to Blow Up a Pipeline. Strangely, though, it's these same mainstream news outlets that tell us the far right is the true boogeyman we must be terrified of. And that's just not true. Now, I don't even know how you would define far right because they're not unified. Like far left, we understand. It's a collection of collectivist ideologies. So you typically see Antifa and Black Lives Matter marching together. On the far right, the ANCAPs and the conservatives don't get along. And the ultra-right, like ultra-traditionalist authoritarian types don't get along with them either. Now, to be fair, more DSA types don't like tankies, the authoritarian far left, but they still will stand side by side for similar causes, more so than you will see on the right. So I don't know what that means, far right. Far left is is easier to understand. Now, I will say, are there crackpot extremists on the far right? Yes. Are they deadly? You betcha. Sometimes we don't know their motives. Sometimes they have ridiculous motives, but sometimes they are associated with like traditional ideologies and things like that. It's hard to know what makes it right or left because according to the ADL, left wing could be like black identity extremism, which I don't understand how that's left, and right is white. So anyway, I digress. We get it. Terror is bad. I don't care if it's a lone wolf white supremacist or far leftists burning down cities. The reality is you are far more likely to be the victim of far left terror than you are far right terror. I know. And the left is already screaming, saying I'm wrong. No. See, the problem is they don't define far left terror in the media as far left terror because they're actively defending it like we see here. So when Antifa comes out, bashing a guy over the head with a bike lock or, burning down buildings, the media just ignores it, defends it, and says they're peaceful protests. Right. But if you do recognize that using violence against the civilian population for a political end is terror, then you're much more likely to encounter far left terror than right-wing terror. And far left terror is sustained and what I refer to as blunt, meaning they don't kill very many people. They have, but not very many. They more so just terrorize neighborhoods and cause property destruction and threaten people into doing what they want. Now, many people come to me and they say, Tim, how can I tell my friends and family about this stuff and help them understand what's happening? And I usually say, share this video, share articles from timcast.com, show them news, and just be nice. Just say, look, I can show you the article. You can dig into the sources if you want. It's on you, right? If you want to understand the truth. Don't call them dumb. Don't insult them. Don't play those games. You just got to be like, look, I can say you're wrong. We disagree. Just at least read these articles and check the source material. Here's the challenge. What do you do when the mainstream media actively supports terrorism? And then you go to your friends and say, I want to help them understand, but they read this and they say, I agree. What happens when the left overtly supports terror? And the reality is, my friends, they're lying to you. And it's about time you woke up to what they're doing. When they come out and they say the right is violent, say, no. I mean, yeah, but some people, but look at this from Antifa. And they go, oh, you're making that up. They're peaceful. They know it's not peaceful. They're lying to you and you're playing their game. Let me show you what's going on. We'll talk about some of this, how the far left plays this game. First, from Fox News, they say the New Yorker hosted environmental activist and Professor Andreas Malm on their podcast where he promoted intelligent sabotage. And property damage is a way to stop climate change. Won't work, won't do anything. It's stupid, destructive, and it's going to get people hurt. Andreas Malm insists the environmental movement rethink its roots in nonviolence and instead embrace intelligent sabotage. The description of the interview states, now I will say this, as we saw with Black Lives Matter, violence harms your cause. And I've explained this to these activists over and over again, but no one seems to ever care to listen. And it's true. We saw with the decline in support for Black Lives Matter due to the riots, and we'll see it with the right should they engage in similar tactics. And you do see it, especially when the media is lying and framing everything against you, no matter what you do. They say in the podcast, Malm, who is a professor from Lund University, emphasized a call for escalation, a call for the movement to diversify its tactics and move away from an exclusive focus on polite, gentle, and perfectly peaceful civil disobedience. Now, some people have said, Tim, you come out and say the left engages in violence and it works for them, but the right shouldn't. No, hold on. The violence doesn't work for the left in the way you think. The riots hurt the left when it is a sustained and slow effort protected by the media. It works. So when Antifa shows up to a small business and threatens them, they cave. When they burn down a city and kill dozens of people in riots, you can't hide that. The media can't shield you. What was it? We heard over and over again, fiery but peaceful protests. A guy from MSNBC standing in front of a burning police department saying, but it's peaceful. Yo, they were looting and pillaging a police department. Quite literally the opposite of peaceful. But the media tries to play cover, making it very, very difficult to reach people. He says, I am recommending that the movement continues with mass action and civil disobedience, but also opens up for property destruction, aka violence. While Malm, who is a human ecology professor at Lund University, does not dismiss peaceful demonstrators and does not condone hurting people, he did emphasize that destroying private property would not be morally illegitimate. If people in that region were to attack the construction equipment or blow up the pipeline before it's completed, I would be all in favor of that. I don't see how that property damage could be considered morally illegitimate, given what we know about the consequence of such projects. The guest literally calls for blowing up pipelines, not a metaphor. New Yorker literally platforming a terrorist. Pluribus editor Gerald Beyer said, Malm has advocated for property destruction in the past. In his book, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, he supported and reasoned the need for violence to promote climate change causes. One example from his book, he advocated for damaging and destroying carbon dioxide emitting devices. Quote, damage and destroy new CO2 emitting devices. Put them out of commission. Pick them up, demolish them, burn them, blow them up. Let the capitalists who keep on investing in the fire know that their properties will be trashed, Malm wrote. I would like to take you back in time to Patreon. When Patreon suspended Lauren Southern, they did so because she was on a boat in the Mediterranean and she was trying to I don't remember exactly what they were doing, so I want to be careful because I don't want to falsely accuse anybody. But they accused her of obstructing a refugee rescue mission. Well, that's a political assumption about what these boats were doing. More complicated than that. The left will claim that it was a refugee rescue mission. But if you actually look at it, a lot of these vessels were actually trafficking people. So I'll leave it at that. Patreon, overnight, deleted Lauren Southern's income, saying, without warning, you're banned. Well, this led to a major uproar. Why? Because there was one leftist publication, I'm not going to say their names, website, that had run a website talking about how to sabotage freight trains, which quite literally would kill people. They talked about I'm not going to say the actions, but doing specific actions which would cause trains to derail very easily, mind you. And they had a Patreon account. Well, many people pointed this out, so Patreon ended up removing them as well. And this led to a major backlash where the left said it was in bad faith, and these people, you're tricked, and it's cancel culture, blah, blah, blah. In the end, Patreon allows many rule breakers on the left, but Carl Benjamin had got deleted. I think this was back in 2019, or actually maybe even before then. He had his account deleted because of a year-old live stream on some obscure channel that he did where he made a point about racial slurs. They deleted him for that. This is the game that's being played. I go on Joe Rogan's show with Jack Dorsey and Vijay Gadde, and they say, "Oh, we enforce the rules evenly." And I say, "No, you don't. Here's an Antifa account on Twitter months ago advocating for violence and directing people to commit it, and you did nothing. You actually banned the people responding to it, which means you knew the tweet existed and you did nothing about it." And every single day, the far left goes on Twitter, advocates for and directs extreme violence and terrorism. We know the game. So maybe there's someone in your life who hasn't heard this and they're not supportive of it. Show them this. I'll go through some of this stuff with you. They say, critics called out New Yorker for normalizing or endorsing political violence for climate change. Quote, I think it's weird that guys who don't own any guns and certainly don't know how to use them seek to normalize political violence. I wonder if they'll act surprised, said Kurt Schlichter, Town Hall senior editor. Spectator contributor Stephen Miller wrote, for those keeping track at home, both the New Yorker and the New York Times are debating and soft endorsing terror acts against national pipelines in the name of climate. So we have Tim Graham showing both articles as well. Benjamin Weingarten saying insurrectionist. In July, a New York Times columnist wrote about Malm's book and excused eco-terrorism against oil companies, saying, quote, still, violence is often deployed, even if counterproductively, on behalf of causes far less consequential than the climate crisis. So skepticism and the practical benefits of violence does not fully explain its absence in a movement this vast and with consequences this grave. Times columnist Ezra Klein wrote, well, here you are, my friends, from the New Yorker. Should the climate movement embrace sabotage? Well, I believe it's called Benford's Laws of Headlines. I could be wrong about the name, but it's basically whenever a headline is a question, the answer is no. Should the climate change movement embrace sabotage? No, they shouldn't. And here you can see how to blow up a pipeline with the New Yorker. Andreas Malm insists the environmental movement rethink its roots in nonviolence and instead embrace intelligent sabotage. Well, I was told this is called stochastic terrorism. When you say, oh, won't someone rid me of this priest? I didn't tell anyone to do it, and then someone went out and rid me of this priest. You see how it goes? The New Yorker says, maybe people should do X. And then, will they be surprised when X is done? No. Think about the manifestation of this. Do you think telling people that to engage in acts of violence would result in them simply stopping at blowing up pipelines? You know about hate crime hoaxes, right? There's many of them. I think that there's like 1,000 over the past few years. Reported hate crimes that have proven to have been hoaxes made up by people. Now, why would they do that? Because they are so indoctrinated in the cult that they're sitting there going, I need people to know what I know. I know. Just lie and they'll believe it. That's the game they play. And it's wrong. But they do it. Take a look at this story. Forestry student turned shaman, 30, faces 9 years in jail for starting California's fawn fire that has burned 8,500 acres and destroyed 41 homes. DA suspects she could be serial arsonist. A forestry student? Shaman? Well, on the surface, it sounds like this yoga teacher was burning down forests. Now, I don't know for sure that this woman is actually just trying to create fires to hoax people. I can tell you. After these fires, what did we hear from the left? They said, oh, it's climate change. Climate change is causing the fires. Turns out it was a yoga instructor and shaman. They say a former forestry student turned shaman and yoga teacher has been charged with starting a huge California wildfire that destroyed 41 homes after claiming the blaze was triggered accidentally when she tried to boil bear urine so she could drink it. Okay. Alexandra Suverneva of Palo Alto was charged Friday with felony arson to wildland with an enhancement because of a declared state of emergency in California. Shasta County DA Stephanie Bridget said. Suverneva pleaded not guilty, but could face up to 9 years in state prison if convicted. Now, I want to stress, as I always do, innocent until proven guilty. I'm not trying to say she started the fire and she did it as a hoax. Her story may be correct. The point is, many people use this story as propaganda to claim that it's climate change. Then you see stories about sabotage. Do you think these people would be beyond burning down a forest to convince people? I don't think so. I don't know that this woman did that, but let's read. During questioning by investigators, Suverneva, who previously worked as a scientist, but whose most recent job was as an SAT tutor, claimed that she had been thirsty while out hiking and found a puddle in a dry creek bed which contained bear urine. She then claims she attempted to fill the water using a tea bag, but when that failed, tried to start a fire to boil the water. Suverneva said that it was too wet to start a fire, so she drank the water and continued walking. So she drank the bear urine? Or what? The fawn fire has charred more than 13 square miles. Suverneva is known to be a graduate of the California Institute of Technology and former Bay Area biotech employee. She has also worked as a yoga teacher. The 30-year-old has a past criminal record that includes several runs with the law, including most recently earlier this month when she was picked up on suspicion of trespassing. It is difficult to grasp when a disaster like this is apparently not a natural disaster, but we have a suspect. They show a photo of her. They have her there in a mask and cuffs. Deliberate ignition, if proven, makes it harder for us to all grasp as a community and to deal with what we're facing. Workers at a nearby quarry reported seeing Suverneva acting strangely and trespassing in the area in Shasta County, where the fawn fire was sparked on Wednesday afternoon, the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection said in a statement. Later on Wednesday, Suverneva walked out of the brush near the fire line and approached firefighters and told them she was dehydrated and needed medical help. She was seen to be carrying a cigarette lighter in her pocket at the time of her arrest. Suverneva was taken out of the area for evaluation and treatment. During an interview with Cal Fire and law enforcement Officers came to believe Suverneva of Palo Alto was responsible for setting the fire, officials said. Now, is it possible? It's possible it's a hoax, but I want to absolutely stress that I do believe in innocent until proven guilty, and that despite this story, I'm not going to jump to the conclusion that she did it on purpose. Maybe she really was just a crazy person trying to drink bear urine. Or maybe she's an excellent world-class survivalist who knew to boil bear urine and knew how to do it, but accidentally sparked a fire. Tough to say, isn't it? Proving intent and proving that she lit it on, proving she lit it on purpose, that's going to be really, really difficult. Especially when she's saying, I was just trying to start a small fire to boil urine, and she didn't intend for there to be a fire. It could be accidental. So maybe she'll get some kind of negligence charge. Regardless, we see in the media, particularly with the Democrats, they use stories like this to claim actually climate change is calling all this. I mean, we've heard AOC say it a million times. But let's not just play games around, potential hoax or whatever. Let's talk about how the mainstream media actually plays this. Andy No. Breaking. Screenshots of the Antifa that engaged in a shooting in Olympia, Washington on September 4th. They are clearly seen carrying weapons like bats and pepper spray. Miguel Louis Laughlin is in the group. OLYPD is still asking the public for tips. He says Miguel Louis Laughlin, a self-described correspondent with the Antifa News Network, was previously arrested in an Antifa riot in Olympia, Washington. Police photographed his fake press badge as evidence on the 4th of September. He was part of the group who engaged in the shooting. I do not believe there is such thing as a fake press pass. If he's calling himself Antifa News Network, we can argue it's an activist organization, but a press pass is a press pass. Now, I suppose you could argue the government mandates, or I should say, issues press passes. I don't agree with this either. So in this instance, I will somewhat defend the Antifa guy. That being said, the media overtly protects them. We see them engage in these acts of violence. Where is the national news story about Antifa firing a gun wildly into the air and striking a man? Apparently, not good enough. And people believe it. The media defends it. And because of that, it will get worse. We'll see more of it. Now, I don't know if they're going to catch this guy or what's going to happen. I think they did catch him and arrest him. But I can expect the media to continue playing the game, and it's because it's their allies. The people of shared political ideology are in these media organizations. Andy No says the Twitter support verified account that called the Antifa shooter who killed someone, a fellow Antifa militant and martyr, is a man who is evading a permanent suspension. I'm not going to get into the names of these individuals, but he goes on to mention that the Antifa accounts that get banned just open new ones. Interestingly, when people on the right do that, they get banned instantly. Interestingly, there are many people who broke no rules on the right who have been banned and had their accounts suspended for no reason. You can see how the system is being played out. How do they maintain something like this? Well, actually, and sadly, it's quite simple. From Post-Millennial, Axios deletes tweets spreading misinformation that Border Patrol agents were whipping at Asian migrants, saying, "We deleted a previous tweet that referred to Border Patrol agents as whipping at Haitian migrants. The story has been updated to include comments from some journalists on the border who did not see whipping occur." When the whipping happened, you may have seen it. We had all of these people on the left, Democrat activists, media personalities, saying they were whipping. How many regular people saw that, believed it, and will not see the correction? The lie travels halfway around the world before the truth can strap on his boots. That's what you get. So then, when Antifa is doing what they do, the media does not reveal it, even when caught lying. In this instance, I'm surprised they finally came out and admitted it. With Antifa, the media just ignores it. Why? Well, I think most of these journalists are fans of Antifa, and I think many of the other ones are just cowards and they're terrified. There are very few journalists who are willing to stand up to these people. Recently, there was a journalist, and I covered this story last week, named Marini, who was trying to cover an Antifa protest, and Antifa threatened her, called her a slur, and then, told her to get lost. She refused. She said, "I'm going to cover the event." The guys who were with her refused to keep doing their job. These other journalists were like, "What are you doing? I'm leaving." Wow. The state of men today, huh? Antifa then physically attacked her, pepper spraying her and shoving her to the ground. She may have been sprayed with paint or something. I think it was pepper spray. So here we are. You have a handful of journalists, I don't care if they're a man or a woman, and one of them says, "I'm going to stand up for what I believe in and I'm going to do journalism." And the rest just say, "Hey, man, look, I'm not going to cross Antifa." And that's what you can expect, and that's what we get. And that's why you will end up with regular people believing crackpot BS. Why you could say, "Hey, Russiagate was fake," and they're like, "I don't know, I heard of this. I saw on MSNBC, but they said, did you actually fact check?" So there are people who are discerning and undiscerning. That's the way I usually describe it. The discerning individual can see the news and say, I got some questions about that, and then look into it. And your normie, undiscerning, regular person just says, wow. There you go. I do think the right has their fair share of people going, wow. What do I mean by that? The mainstream media lies. So they'll say, you're a liar. And then they'll turn to some fringe right-wing website and just believe it. No. Just because some crackpot is a liar doesn't mean some other crackpot is telling the truth. So if you're discerning, you're looking at all the information and saying, I need evidence. I can take it with a grain of salt, but I need evidence. For the time being, what do we get? Mainstream media is going to continue platforming terrorists. Imagine if they put up someone who is far right and said, he wants to state his case as to why some people should engage in sabotage. They would never do it. Sabotage. Imagine if you had half that degree of severity, or a quarter of it, or a tenth of it. Imagine if it was something as simple as a Republican believes that we should have harder voting laws to increase responsibility of the vote. They would never run that. But they will run like blowing up pipelines. That is insane. So when I say civil war, and these people say, Tim, it'll never happen, I say they're literally advocating violent terrorism over at the New Yorker. Pay attention. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.